the collision detection between two circles and also between a circle and a mouse. You're also going to be making a ball moving around the window, bouncing off the edges. So let's take a look at how these two look like. The first video, I have a ball moving around the window, bouncing off the edges. And the second video, it does the same thing, but this time around there is mouse clicking event. So when the mouse clicks on the ball changes the color, and when the mouse clicks just any other part of the window, the ball changes the color to black. And then before we look into those two examples, you're going to be working with something more simpler. So we're going to be looking into how to make a ball changes its color when a mouse clicks on it or when a mouse is inside of the circle. But then also before looking at that example, I just want to make sure that you understand how to find the location of your shape that you're going to be drawing on the panel, like on pane. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that first. So let's do some math review. So let's say you are given the upper left coordinates of a square. So we are given a square, or you can think of it as a rectangle. And then you're also given the dimension of the rectangle. So W and H. And then we also have an oval, or it can be a circle, if the W equals to H. But if these two values are different, we basically have an oval. Okay, so we have an oval that is enclosed inside of the square or rectangle. Our goal is to find the location of the other vertices as well as the center for the oval. If you're given this information, like these three pieces of information, you should still be able to find the location of other vertices. So for example, the one on the upper right corner, it should be x plus w comma y, because simply what you're doing is you're moving w units to the right from x location. So basically you're adding w to x. X represent the horizontal location. And having said that, you should know how to find the bottom left corner. It should be x comma y plus h, because we are adding h value to the y to get the location of the bottom left corner. If you recall, um, in a window, our vertical position value will increase as you go down. Okay. And then finally, the last vertex will have x plus w comma y plus h. And then what about the center over here? The center can be found by using the radius of the circle, or maybe the w and h of the square or the rectangle that is given to us. So we can just basically take a look at the length of the horizontal location, which is W in this case. And if you have that, we basically get the value of this, right? So assuming that this is a circle, we're going to get a radius basically. But radius is basically equal to W divided by 2. And because we're assuming that this is a circle, W is also equal to H. Okay, so this value or this value will also equal to r. So therefore, our center of the circle is equal to, or is at, x plus r comma y plus r. Okay, or in the case of an oval, your center will have a value x plus w over 2 comma y plus h over 2. All right, because that point, the center, is half of the width away from the left corner and half of the height away from that upper left corner. All right, so that would be the coordinates of the center for oval, where you have different w and h value. But in this case, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to call it R since our W and H values are the same. Okay, now, and then we're going to be creating something looks like this. Okay, so when you hover your mouse inside of the circle color changes. So let's just take a look at this example one more time. So what we need to know is basically the distance between your mouse and the center of the circle. That's what we need to find because that's how we know that our mouse is inside of a circle. We gotta find the distance between the center and where my mouse is, right? If my mouse is outside of the circle, that means the distance between my mouse and the center is greater than the radius of the circle. If my mouse is inside of it, then it's going to be less than the radius of the circle. Okay, so that's how we can determine whether our mouse is inside or outside. Okay, so let's determine the range of the mouse's position inside the circle. So assuming that your mouse location is at, I'm just gonna come up with random variable, mouse X, mouse Y, and at the center, remember it was X plus R and Y plus R, or W over 2 and H over 2 over here. Okay, now our interest is to find the distance between these 2 points. So you have to recall how you found distance between 2 points in grade 10 math. Okay, I'll give you the formula here. So distance between 2 points, x1 and y1, x2 and y2 can be written as this. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And then you add them together and square root of everything. So that will give you the distance between 2 points, any 2 points. Now, if you want to find the distance between the center of the circle and the mouse, you would simply substitute those coordinates. Okay? In Java Swing, and the same thing for Java FX as well, to get the position of your mouse, you can simply call the method getX and getY. The event variable represent the mouse event. Okay, so by calling getX and getY, this will return the horizontal location of the mouse, and this will return the vertical location of the mouse. So basically, you can use this to replace the mouse X and mouse Y. All right? Since we're going to be looking at Java Swing example for this lesson, I'm just going to add on one more thing before we get into an example. So this is something that you need to add on to your program or your application to add on a mouse listener, mouse motion listener. So this will basically add on the mouse motion into your program so that when the mouse is inside of the circle, we can say that the color of the circle should change. And then when the mouse is outside of the circle, we need to change the color back to normal or to something else. Okay, so make sure that you add this piece onto your program. And then what you're going to be overriding is mouse moved method. So make sure that you call this method and you also override this method, mouse moved, and then your code for changing the color will go inside of it. Okay, so let's take a look at an example together. So I have an example already written down. Um, Let me just quickly go over what I have over here. So as you can see, we have instant variables to store the x and y position of the ball. Usually in Java Swing, when we're talking about the location of a shape, we're referring to the top upper left corner. Okay, so this would represent the upper left corner. And then I also have a radius value of 50. And I also have a color variable to store the color. And here in my constructor, that's where I call add mouse motion listener. And then in the mouse moved method, I like to use the selection statement. So basically, it's saying if the distance between my mouse and the center of the circle is less than the radius of the ball, then we want to change the color to red. Otherwise, change the color to black. Okay, so once again, E basically represent the mouse event, and get X, get Y will get you the X and Y value of the mouse. So we have a coordinates of mouse, and then X plus R, Y plus R are the coordinates for the center of the ball. Sorry, not the center. Oh, yes, it is the center. Yeah, center of the ball. And then here I'm using this method just to kind of like simplify in the if statement. So this method is defined underneath over here. So this method takes four arguments, and I'm using math square and math power functions to find the distance between those 2 points. So this is basically the distance formula that I'm using. Okay, so let's run this. So this is what I have. So as you can see over here, so if I scroll down, I have a main method added on. In the main method, you will need to create a frame, JFrame, JPanel, and then you're going to be adding on our ball to the pane. Okay, so that's what I have over here. Okay, so if I hover over to the circle color changes to red. If I move outside of the circle, the color changes to black. Okay, so that's what we made. And then one thing I just want you to pay attention to. So here, I also have this line graphics to the G2 equals. So basically, what I'm doing here is the parameter graphics parameter that we're passing to pane component. We're casting it to graphics 2D. Graphics 2D, just think of this as more advanced version of graphics. So pane component will take graphics as a argument, so you need to pass that in. But because we do want to have access to more features, more functions, this is a choice that you want to go for, graphics 2D. But in this case, technically set colors at oval functions are available in graphics as well, so you don't really need to. But I just wanted to show you that this is possible so that you can have like more functionality, more features within the graphics that you're making. Okay, so that's very simple example over here. Now we're going to be looking at two circles colliding. So you need to have a radius of the first circle, radius of the second circle, and then you add these two together to come up with the distance between the two center of the circle. All right. If they're just about to collide, if they're like touching each other, like what you see in the diagram, the distance between these two will be just R1 plus R2. That'll be the maximum distance between the two center when they're colliding. If they are closer to each other, so let's say they are overlapping, that means obviously the distance between two centers will be less than R1 plus R2. Okay? So you can set your selection statements in a way utilizing this number to detect the colliding of those two circles. Now, let's take a look at how to make your ball move around. If you think about a ball moving around in the window, obviously we don't have a physical ball moving around in the screen. We have basically a shape that's painted on the screen. And then that's going to be repainted at a different location so that it looks like it's moving around. So obviously we're going to be changing the location of the circle with a small amount so that it makes it look like it's smoothly moving around. Okay, so that's what you're going to be doing. So update the location of the circle and then repaint it. And then obviously, you want to delay the updation a little bit so that it actually shows you the movement of the circle. If you don't delay it, what happens is you're not going to be able to see the actual movement. Okay? So for Java Swing, what you're going to do, you're going to be adding timer object. So the timer object will allow you to delay the updation. So if you take a look at what's happening inside of the action performed method here, where we put in the selection statement and we also put the updation of the location so that this code will be called every like 10 milliseconds. So when you're creating timer object, make sure that you pass in how many like milliseconds do you want to delay calling this function or calling the block of code instead of the action performed. Okay. And then if you take a look at the selection statement, you will notice that this is used to change the direction of the ball. When the ball reaches so let's say this is the window that we have. If the ball reaches the right edge, obviously the ball needs to move to the left. And then if the ball reaches the left edge, it needs to move to the right. Okay, and then here we have a variable called dx. Dx basically is already defined previously, and then these values are going to be used to make a small change to the x position of the ball. All right, and they are previously defined as 2 initially before this code. I just didn't have a space to put everything down here. So dx is initially 2, but then if the ball reaches the right edge, dx will become negative dx, which means negative 2. So that the ball is going to be added a negative number, which means the ball will eventually move to the left. Okay, so the updation will happen at the bottom over here. So if you take a look at the condition here, what it says over here is that when x, which is the x location of the ball, is less than or equal to 0, that indicates that when the ball is on the left edge, that's when the x value of the ball is equal to 0. Or when x is greater than or equal to get width subtract w. So get width will basically give you the size of the J component where the ball is drawn on. Okay, so this is basically the width of the component, get width. And if you subtract W, so W is width of the circle. All right, W is the width of the circle. So pretty much the diameter of the circle. So if you subtract W from the width of the J component, you will eventually get the position of the circle when the circle is touching the right edge. Okay? So basically what's saying here is when this value, the x location of the circle, gets bigger than this value that I am pointing at, obviously, that indicates that the ball has reached the right edge, so we want to change the direction. So the same thing happens in this condition. This is for the vertical position. When the ball reaches the top or the bottom, we want to change the location or change the direction of the speed or change the sign of the dy so that the ball will move a different location, like different direction. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And then obviously you gotta repaint it afterwards to repaint the ball. And then don't forget to call the method timer start. So that's what I have, like I already show it to you. Here I have width and height separately, but you can just have a radius or diameter and then you can just use that value. Totally up to you. And this is basically the code that I showed you in the slide, called start method for the timer. And then I also added on the mouse listener event here as well. By the way, this condition though is very simple condition. I didn't really consider a circle. This would be ideal for a rectangle. Okay, a rectangle. Just make sure if you're using a circle, you gotta actually find the distance between the center and the mouse. Okay, so let's run this just to see what happens. So here you go. So my ball is bouncing off the edges, and then when I click on the ball changes. When I click on somewhere else, it changes to black. And then when I click on something else, I also kind of like added on a message saying, you missed. You missed, you missed. And if I click on the ball changes the color and I don't get that message. So that's pretty much it.